this is echoed again in the white paper, is that 4 of the world's 5 biggest economies will be in this region come about 15 years' time, so measuring that in purchasing power parity terms. So those economies, China will be no big surprise to anybody, India, Japan. I think Indonesia would surprise many at number 5 on that list, so just 15 years from today. So these are enormous economies, and in that same period, in fact probably in the next decade, Australia is going to drop out of the G20. So this is a badge that we've worn walking the world stage now for many, many years. Our G20 badge, we will no longer be a member of the G20. That's a sobering thought for many Australians, or should be. So the point that Stephanie made is absolutely critical. If we're going to have global industries, if those industries are not in Asia, I don't think you can say that we are a global company or a global country even if we're not in Asia. So to go to the point that Helen, you were just making, in Southeast Asia alone, over 620 million people, region economically growing at 5% per annum, half of that population is under the age of 30. If you look at sort of heat maps of social media use, Southeast Asia features very prominently, and particularly Indonesia is one of the, if not the global hotspot for social media. And mobile phone penetration is phenomenal in these countries. In fact, in Indonesia, in the next 1 or 2 years, we'll probably tick over the 100 million mobile smartphone user mark. It's 100 million. That's a staggering number. And in many ways, I think the region is a case study for this leap in technology that Edward's referred to as well. The fixed line infrastructure that most of us take for granted here is not available in many parts of Asia, and how they address this. Mobile telephony took off. Everybody has a mobile phone. They reached 100% penetration and more a long time ago. And in places like China, you see mobile phones are now really the centre of their shopping and retail experience. So many of us will have heard of Alibaba's Singles Day. The sales are just mind-boggling. But I think the thing which for me is the most startling is that over 90% of the sales that were made by Alibaba were made by somebody using a mobile phone, a smartphone, to place that order. And so the consumers in the region want what we all have here in Australia. They want to buy products from all around the world, and they're doing that increasingly using mobile phones and talking about brands on social media. So, the statistic that Stephanie just gave us, that a lot of Australian companies are not even in the digital world yet, means that they're not being found by those consumers. And these are consumers that by most predictions will be responsible for more than half of the world's GDP in the next 10 to 15 years. So if we're not finding those consumers, our companies are in a great deal of trouble. So if you look at, in China, retail sales now online account for about 17% of gross retail sales. In the US, that's about 8% now. And in Indonesia, it's about 1%. So you can see the potential growth there. Here, China, interestingly, China has been tagged, many of us will have heard China being tagged as a copycat, doesn't innovate. I think that's a terribly wrong assumption. If you look at what Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, so the so-called BATs, are producing and doing with mobile technology, in many cases, you look at artificial intelligence, robotics, China is amongst the leaders. Edward talked about mobile payments. They are by far the world leader in mobile payments, more than 11 times the size of the US electronic payments market in China. So it's a staggering change. Of course, there are challenges in the region, no question about that. Logistics, people not having bank accounts, those kinds of things are challenges, but I can tell you it is changing fast, like breathtakingly quickly. And I think one of the big mistakes that Australian businesses make is to assume that we because we've got 100 years of doing things the way that we do them, are leading the world and know everything. I think I agree entirely with the advice that Stephanie was given. Our companies are in real danger of being cleaned up, and the only thing which is protecting us at the moment is regulation in this country, because for 100 years we've got away with having large amounts of ocean between us and everybody else. In a digital world, that ocean doesn't mean anything. So the only thing standing between us and these global companies that bring enormous scale, low cost bases, and incredible customer service and technology is regulation, and that's not going to stay for very long, I don't think.